Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Joel Winters. I'm 45 years old, and 2 weeks ago, I sat in a law office that used to feel like home while my father's attorney handed everything, every contract, every asset, every drop of sweat I ever gave to our family company, to my stepbrother. To Caleb. Not to me. Not to the son who gave up a scholarship to Stanford to come home and help his dad save the company. Not to the man who built that business from a failing operation into a regional powerhouse with $18 million in annual revenue. Not to the one who stayed. Caleb got it all. Winters and Sons forestry, land, trucks, clients, contracts, and even my father's office chair. I didn't scream. I didn't flip a table. But I'll be honest, something inside me cracked that day. As the attorney slid the folder across the desk, my stepmother smiled like she'd just won a long game of chess. Caleb didn't even look at me, he just nodded once like a CEO taking command. The only one who looked horrified was my little sister, Amanda, whose hand slipped into mine under the table and squeezed hard enough to leave marks. Joel. I thought. I stood up. Don't, I said. If Dad wanted to split this family wide open, he succeeded. I didn't wait for their reaction. I just walked out. The truth is, I saw it coming. Not all at once, but in little moments, the late-night meetings I wasn't invited to anymore, the clients I used to handle now being passed to Caleb with no explanation, and the way Dad's tone shifted whenever my stepmother Evelyn was around. It went from pride to polite distance. From we to he. It hurt. God, it hurt. My father and I built that company together. Winters and Sons used to be just the two of us and a second-hand loader we could barely keep running. After my mom passed, the business became the only thing holding us together. He'd say, "We don't just sell lumber, we sell trust. That's what they're really buying." I believed him. But maybe trust was just another resource to him. Something you use up until the next shiny thing comes along. That shiny thing was Caleb. Caleb, Evelyn's son from her first marriage, didn't grow up stacking logs or riding delivery routes with Dad before sunrise. No, Caleb grew up in prep schools and business seminars. He got a master's in business administration and knew all the buzzwords: synergy, pivoting, scaling the legacy. Dad ate it up. He once pulled me aside and said, "Joel, I know you're the heart of this company, but Caleb brings vision. He'll help us reach the next level." I thought we'd both get to lead. I thought the plan was to share it, split duties, grow together. I was wrong. The last thing my father ever said to me was in that sterile hospital room. He'd grabbed my hand and whispered, "Don't be angry, son. You're strong enough to build something new." I didn't understand what he meant at the time. But I do now. I pulled into the Winters and Sons yard the next morning like I always did, 6:15 a.m. sharp. Same worn-down work truck, same thermos of black coffee, same expectation that the crews would be stretching out by the forklifts and waiting for instructions. But no one looked at me. They looked through me. Jimmy, our longest-standing loader operator, guy I hired myself, nodded politely but didn't say a word. Kyle, the intern I mentored all summer, avoided eye contact altogether. And when I walked into the office and tried to log into my workstation, password changed. I walked into what had been my father's office. Caleb sat behind the desk, feet up like it was always his, sipping something from one of Dad's old mugs. I blinked. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Hope you brought your truck keys." "What?" "We reassigned the Dodge to our site ops crew," he said casually. "Company assets need to be used more efficiently now." I stared at him. "You're serious?" He glanced at me like I was the one out of place. "Joel, let's not make this personal. I get that this is uncomfortable. But Dad's vision was for me to modernize Winters and Sons. He trusted me to lead, and I intend to. By cutting me out. You're not cut out, you're just legacy. And legacy needs to step back so we can grow. Legacy. That word felt like a knife to the gut. It was what Dad used to praise me for. Now it was a reason to erase me. Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own house. My office was cleared out. Caleb's assistant accidentally deleted my contacts list. A memo went out announcing the realignment of roles, stating I'd be transitioning to an advisory position, whatever that meant, until further notice. No one said it out loud, but everyone saw it. I was being pushed out without being fired. No severance. No title. No stake. Just a slow-motion execution, carried out with smiles and handshakes. Amanda called me that weekend. "He's posting pictures from your office," she said. "New art on the wall, new standing desk," he even changed the nameplate to Caleb Winters, CEO. I sat alone on my porch, staring out at the pine ridges where Dad used to take me hunting when I was a kid. I'd given up my 20s for this company. Gave up grad school, gave up a shot at moving to Portland with Sarah before she left me. Everything I ever poured into my life had the Winters name on it. And now that name didn't mean me anymore. Monday morning, I didn't go in. I didn't go in Tuesday either. I stayed in bed late. Let the dishes pile up. Ignored my phone. I hadn't felt this empty since my mom died. And this time, there was no one to sit beside me on the tailgate and say it was gonna be okay. I didn't even know who I was without that company. But grief has a way of turning into fire. And fire, when pointed in the right direction, becomes fuel. That spark came on Wednesday. I'd gone to the office late at night when I knew no one would be around. Just needed to feel the place. Needed to see if any part of it still remembered me. That's when I found it. Dad's red leather binder. Tucked behind a row of old ledgers in the filing cabinet that Caleb clearly hadn't touched. Inside were handwritten notes, Dad's writing, scribbles about land transfers, supplier contracts, and something called the Pine Ridge expansion. A project that never went public. A project that, according to Dad's own words, had been set aside for Joel, in case of future leadership transition. My heart slammed into my ribs. There were dates. Details. Maps. And stapled at the back, a single page labeled, Irrevocable Letter of Intent, Cascade Zone Holdings. Not signed. Not executed. But with my name listed as 100% managing partner. This wasn't just a note. It was something Dad had started for me. Maybe he backed out. Maybe Evelyn convinced him it wasn't viable. But it was there. My name. His trust. A door left slightly open. That night, something shifted. The man who'd been sulking on his porch disappeared. In his place was the man who built a multi-million-dollar company from dirt and diesel. And the man who knew exactly what needed to be done next. There was something about holding that binder, Dad's binder, that made my hands steady again. For days, I'd been a mess, drifting in and out of who I was and who I used to be. But this? This was solid. Tangible. It was a thread that connected me back to the man who taught me everything I knew, even if he betrayed me at the end. I sat at my dining table, binder open, legal pad spread out, documents laid flat under a desk lamp like I was building a case. In a way, I was. Dad had outlined a potential expansion into Pine Ridge, an untouched plot of timberland southeast of Spokane. I remembered him mentioning it a few years back, but I thought it was just one of his retirement fantasies. But here it was, acquisition offers, old emails, back and forths with land surveyors and even a draft agreement with a logistics firm called Cascade Hauling. My name appeared again and again. I was supposed to lead this. It was like he had one foot in two futures, one where Caleb took over the main business, and another where I had a legacy of my own. Maybe he was trying to be fair. Maybe he thought giving Caleb the company and me the land was balance. But intentions don't matter once the damage is done. What mattered now was this: Caleb didn't know about any of this. That was my edge. And it got sharper. Because behind an envelope labeled, Survey Quotes, 2023, I found something that made my blood freeze. A photocopy of a check. $100,000. Made out to Everstone Equity Group. Memo: Initial investment, Timber Valley Holdings LLC. It wasn't in Dad's handwriting. And it wasn't his signature. It was Evelyn's. The date? 6 weeks before Dad passed. And scrawled in the corner, in Caleb's handwriting, because I recognized it from the way he signs everything with a self-important slant, were the words, seed funding secured, leaseback option. I stared at it, heart thudding like a war drum. What the hell? It wasn't just that Evelyn and Caleb were investing in another timber company. It was when they did it. Before Dad's death. Before I was pushed out. While pretending they were consolidating the family business, they were laying the groundwork to siphon it off. They weren't planning to just run Winters and Sons into the future. They were planning to replace it. Privately. Quietly. Under a different name. That wasn't succession. That was sabotage. And now, armed with this folder, I had the receipts. I grabbed my laptop and started running every business lookup site I knew. Timber Valley Holdings LLC, registered to a P.O. box in Tacoma. Agent on record. A law firm that specialized in corporate shells and asset shielding. I cross-referenced that with Everstone Equity. What I found wasn't just another investment. It was a mirror company. Timber Valley Holdings had filed permits for a lumber distribution facility, 30 miles from our biggest client's warehouse. A site that, if launched, would undercut our routes, absorb our clients, and make Winters and Sons obsolete. They hadn't just inherited the company. They'd planned to gut it from the inside, then launch something sleeker, data-driven, and completely sanitized of me. My stomach twisted. All those years, the nights I stayed at the yard until 10 p.m., the holidays I skipped, the deals I negotiated on nothing but handshake and trust, they'd used it all to launch their next empire. But now they'd made a fatal mistake. They didn't burn the evidence. They left it in the hands of the one man who still knew every supplier, every foreman, every CEO we ever worked with, and who they treated like disposable trash. Me. It would have been easy to blow everything up right then. Screenshot every document. Send anonymous tips to every vendor and client. Leak it to the press. But no. That wasn't justice. That was a tantrum. And this, what they'd done, deserved precision. Deserved a slow bleed. Deserved revenge. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of rage, but clarity. Everything I needed was already in front of me. My father's expansion plan. The paperwork Evelyn and Caleb thought they buried. And most importantly, the knowledge that I didn't need Winters and Sons to survive. I could build something stronger. Something mine. I pulled an old file box from the closet. Inside was a folder labeled WJ Timber LLC, a business I'd quietly registered 6 years ago when I'd first started feeling pushed out. I never activated it. It was more of a, just in case, kind of thing. Well, just in case had arrived. I drove to a notary the next morning and reactivated the business. Then I did something even more important. I called Donald Pierce, CEO of Pierce Lumber Group. Donald had been a client for 15 years, back when we used to sell mixed loads out of a gravel lot and haul timber in a borrowed trailer. "Joel," he answered. "Didn't expect to hear from you." "I'm not calling from Winters and Sons," I said. "I'm calling from my own outfit. WJ Timber." There was a pause. Well now. That's interesting. I laid it all out, quietly. I told him I was forming a new venture. That it would operate with the same values Winters and Sons had before politics poisoned the water. That I was looking for long-term partnerships, not just contracts. "Joel," Donald said, "I've got a problem." "What kind?" "Your stepbrother's an arrogant fool. We've already had 3 billing errors and 2 late shipments in the last 10 days. I didn't say anything out of respect for your dad's name, but, if you're starting fresh." "I am." "Then let's talk." I made 5 more calls that day. 4 of them resulted in meetings. Every person I reached out to said the same thing. "We trusted you, Joel, not the name on the door." By the end of the week, I had commitments for over 40% of our former client base. That weekend, I drove out to Pine Ridge, the site my father had scouted for the now-abandoned expansion. The land was still available. A quiet, 22-acre spread with gravel access and zoning rights for industrial activity. It was raw. Unpolished. A fixer-upper. But it was perfect. I used what was left of my savings to place an option to purchase with a 60-day close. I didn't even hesitate. This time, no one was going to snatch it from under me. Then came phase 2, people. I reached out to Tomas Delgado, our former logistics supervisor, laid off when Caleb streamlined operations. I told him about WJ Timber. He didn't even ask for salary. "When do we start?" he said. Then it was Ruby from accounting. Marco from dispatch. Kyle, the intern Caleb had ignored so thoroughly that the kid was thinking of leaving the industry altogether. One by one, I started bringing back the best of us, the ones who still believed in the work. Not the brand. Not the name. But in the integrity. Next came the suppliers. That was trickier. Caleb had tried to negotiate down pricing with every single one of them, claiming we were overleveraged. But what he didn't understand was that loyalty often meant more than a few cents per board foot. I had a sit-down with Tammy at Evergreen Haulage, a woman who once stayed open 3 hours late so we could deliver a rush order to a hospital in Spokane. I told her the truth, I was starting over. And she just smiled and said, "You won't pay fuel surcharges for the first 6 months. That's your loyalty rebate." Word started to spread. Whispers in the yard. Lunch trucks. Client offices. Joel's back. Starting something new. Not corporate. Not slick. Just solid. I made sure not to say a word publicly. I didn't need Caleb or Evelyn catching wind. Yet. Instead, I made quiet moves. Formed LLCs. Leased a modest warehouse. Ordered new branding materials. Printed my first business cards in a decade. WJ Timber, built on honor. It was corny. But it was true. Then I went back to the red binder one last time. At the very back was a rough draft of a letter my father had been writing, maybe months before his death. Unfinished, with pen marks and corrections. But it started like this. "Joel. If you're reading this, then things didn't go the way I hoped. I want you to know, I never doubted your value. Not once. But I did doubt Caleb's. And maybe that was the mistake. He needed the title. But you never needed permission. I don't know why he never finished it. Maybe Evelyn found it. Maybe he was too ashamed. But it didn't matter anymore. I had what I needed. And now, it was time to start turning the screws. Because in 2 weeks, Timber Valley Holdings, the fake company Caleb and Evelyn had built behind my back, was scheduled to launch their official press release. New vision. New legacy. Revolutionizing timber distribution. What they didn't know was that I'd already talked to their top 3 clients. And in 48 hours, I'd be taking my first official meeting under WJ Timber. With every supplier they thought they controlled. You ever watch a house collapse in silence? Not with fire. Not with wrecking balls. But slow, board by board. Beam by beam. That's what revenge looked like for me. Not loud. Not messy. Just, precise. It started the morning Timber Valley Holdings launched their big press release. I sat in my modest new office, still smelling like paint and sawdust, watching Evelyn beam on a YouTube ad with her frozen grin, while Caleb stood behind her in a tailored suit, arms folded like he was auditioning for Forbes. We are proud to bring a new era of efficiency and excellence to the timber industry, Evelyn said. Rooted in tradition, but engineered for the future. I nearly spit out my coffee. They'd even hired an ad agency. What they didn't know was that their 3 biggest target clients had already signed letters of intent with me. They thought they were announcing dominance. But what they really did was announce war. By noon, my phone buzzed. Tammy from Evergreen Haulage. You're not gonna believe this, she laughed. Caleb just called asking about exclusive shipping rights for Timber Valley Holdings. I didn't say a word. She continued, I told him we were already at capacity, with a new client that had values more aligned with ours. Thanks, Tammy. Joel, I'd take loyalty over flash any day. They don't get it. No. They didn't. That week, 4 more clients made the switch. Quietly. No press. No drama. Just rerouted invoices, updated delivery addresses, and new PO numbers bearing my logo. WJ Timber was growing. And Winters and Sons. They were bleeding. Fast. I didn't even need to sabotage them, Caleb was doing it himself. He tried modernizing operations by automating customer service, slashing discounts, and enforcing full payment up front. Our old clients didn't like that. They liked people. They liked me. By Friday, I received a call that made me sit up straight. Cascade Mill. The largest supplier in the entire Northwest region. They were still under contract with Winters and Sons. But the rep, Tom, sounded agitated. Joel, off the record, we don't like how this is going. What's happening? Caleb's trying to renegotiate the contract. Wants us to cut rates by 15% or he'll go elsewhere. But we've been working with your family for 20 years. He's not my family, I said, calm and cold. Tom paused. Well then, he said. How about you come by Monday? Let's talk numbers. Real ones. That night, I sat on my porch and watched the sun disappear behind the pine trees. And I smiled. Because I wasn't taking back what was mine. I was building something better. But the best was still to come. Monday morning, Timber Valley Holdings hosted a networking brunch with press, clients, and suppliers. I wasn't invited. Didn't need to be. Because while they were shaking hands and bragging about software integrations, I was down the road, signing a private distribution deal with Pierce Group, the second largest lumber buyer in the state. They committed 70% of their 2024 purchase orders to WJ Timber. Not because we were cheaper. But because I showed up. Because I cared. And because I'd never once pretended trust could be automated. At 2 p.m., I got a text from Amanda. They look panicked. Evelyn just left the room with her phone. Caleb's face is pale. Something's gone wrong. Oh, something had gone very wrong. Because Pierce Group had just pulled their interest in Timber Valley Holdings, without explanation. And their contract was now mine. At 5:30 p.m., Caleb called. First time since the will. Joel. We need to talk. I let it ring. Then sent him a text. Everything okay? Heard Timber Valley's launch is going, differently than expected. No reply. Just silence. Exactly the sound I wanted. But this story wasn't done yet. Because 2 days later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a USB drive. And a note. Figured you should see what Evelyn's really been doing. From someone who owes you the truth. I stared at the USB drive for a long time before plugging it in. There's a kind of silence that settles in your bones when you know you're about to open something that'll change everything. Not just business. But blood. I clicked the folder. Inside were scanned PDFs, audio recordings, and one video file labeled, Evelyn_Cascade_Deal_Intercept.mp4. I opened that one first. It was grainy, like it had been filmed from a phone placed discreetly on a desk. But the voices were clear. Too clear. Evelyn, you're not understanding me. I don't care what Joel signed with Cascade. That contract expires in 60 days. What I need is for you to delay shipments until we can squeeze him dry. Other voice, a man, that's going to cost penalties. Evelyn, and I'll pay them. Personally. Off the books. He'll miss deliveries, lose client trust, and by then we'll absorb the fallout. He won't have the capital to sustain the penalties. He's working off savings. He can't outlast us. My jaw locked. It wasn't just that Evelyn was trying to compete. She was actively trying to sabotage my supply chain. Privately bribing people to delay shipments. Hoping I'd fail before I could scale. It didn't work. But it could have. The rest of the files? Worse. Emails between Evelyn and a consultant discussing how to dilute Joel's influence in the region by seeding negative reviews through shell LLCs. Invoices for payments labeled consulting, funneled through Timber Valley Holdings, but redirected to accounts not listed in their public books. And one final recording. A phone call. Caleb's voice, shaky. Mom, I'm not sure about this anymore. Joel's winning. The clients are bailing. Evelyn, sharp. Then make something up. Leak a story. Say he stole data or violated ethics. Caleb, lower. That's illegal. Evelyn. So is cutting you out of the will if I hadn't convinced your father to sign those trust transfers. Grow up, Caleb. You don't win by playing nice. I leaned back, feeling ice crawl down my spine. She forged Dad's trust transfers. That letter Dad started, where he admitted he was torn, that wasn't guilt. That was fear. He knew what she was doing. He just didn't know how to stop her. But I did. I saved all the files to a backup drive. Then I called my lawyer, Renee Marks. A bulldog in heels who once shut down an entire competitor for antitrust violations in 3 days flat. She listened to the audio twice and just said, "Oh, honey. We're going to burn them down legally and with style." By the next morning, Renee had drafted a cease and desist, a formal ethics complaint, and a civil tort claim for tortious interference, slander, and fraud. We sent it to Evelyn, Caleb, Timber Valley Holdings, and their primary investors. By noon, Timber Valley Holdings inboxes were flooded. By 3 p.m., their top 2 investors had pulled out. By 6 p.m., Evelyn called me directly. I let it ring. She called again. And again. Finally, I answered. "Joel," she started. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I do," I said calmly. "I'm doing what you feared since the day you forged my father's signature. I'm telling the truth. You'll destroy Caleb." "No," I said. "You did that. I'm just letting the world watch." She paused. Then, "What do you want?" And there it was, the moment the Queen finally realized the board was lost. I didn't need money. I didn't want apologies. I wanted the truth. And I wanted it public. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to dissolve Timber Valley Holdings. Issue a statement admitting full responsibility for misleading investors, and withdraw from the timber industry permanently. And Caleb? He issues a personal apology to every client he lied to. Joel. Or I forward these files to the state attorney general. With my blessing, Renee will make you a case study in corporate sabotage. The silence was thick. Then she whispered, like I was her executioner. You're just like your father. No, I said. I'm who he should have been. I hung up. And exhaled. For the first time in weeks, it felt like I could breathe. The retraction came out on a Thursday. Buried between business updates and real estate listings, but there it was. Timber Valley Holdings to dissolve following internal review of ethics violations. It was corporate speak, of course. No mention of bribes. No mention of sabotage shipments or whispered threats to legacy clients. But it was enough. Enough to show the world who they really were. Enough to clear my name. And enough to prove, beyond any doubt, that I didn't lose the company, I survived it. That afternoon, a courier arrived at my office with a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was from Caleb. Joel. I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't know the full extent of what my mother was doing, but I knew enough. And I let it happen. I told myself I was finally stepping into something I deserved. But now I see I was only ever walking in your shadow, just pretending it was my light. I don't know if I ever earned my place in the family. But I know you did. I'm leaving town. Take care of Amanda. And, if there's anything left of Dad's memory that still feels worth saving, I hope it lives through you. Caleb. I read it twice. Folded it neatly. And placed it in my desk drawer. Not out of sentiment. But as a reminder. Of what happens when you mistake inheritance for identity. 2 weeks later, I stood outside our newly finished warehouse at WJ Timber, watching my crew unload our latest shipment from Cascade Mill. Jimmy shouted instructions. Ruby laughed at something Marco said. Kyle brought me a clipboard with a delivery checklist and a grin like he finally belonged somewhere. It felt like family. Real family. Not the kind written into wills or tied by blood. But the kind built by trust, sweat, and showing up even when no one asks you to. We'd signed 4 new clients since Timber Valley collapsed. We were expanding. Slowly. Smartly. And this time, on my terms. Amanda stopped by later that day. Brought coffee. Watched the crew for a few minutes. You know, she said, Dad would be proud. I looked at her, unsure how to answer. I'm not doing this for him anymore, I said. I know, she said. That's why he would be proud. I smiled. Not because I needed her approval. But because she was the only one left whose opinion still mattered. And because after everything, after the betrayal, the erasure, the sabotage, I'd finally reclaimed something no one could ever take again. My name. My work. My legacy. And my peace. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.